Hi there, welcome to AI Mistakes. Today I want to bring you a nice top 10 list. Yeah, I know, it's a thing. Turns out people like lists on YouTube, so we're going to give it a shot. Here it is, 10 mistakes you can make when using ChatGPT. I'm finding it tremendously beneficial and useful, and if you're not already playing with it, why not? It's definitely worth looking into. All right, number one. Real-time information. So ChatGPT can't keep up with the news. It has data that only goes through September of the year 2021. Number two, personalized advice. So it turns out that ChatGPT is absolutely not good at accessing personal information. I'm a good case study in that. So my name is Daniel Lemire, and I happen to share the same first and last name with a number of people around the world. Most notably is a computer science professor up in Canada. He's done papers, studies, and continues to be a prolific researcher in the computing and data analysis space. So if you go into ChatGPT right now and you ask it, who is Daniel Lemire, it's not going to be talking about me. I wish the things that it said were actually talking about me, but I am not known to the model, and so the training data set includes information about the other Daniel, and that's not me. So using that information in its database, the personalized advice for me doesn't work at all because it's actually using the wrong Daniel when I'm asking it questions. But beyond that, it's very difficult for ChatGPT to use information specifically about you. There's no easy way to get it in. You can feed it a little bit of data in a single interaction, but that has its own limitations, and we'll revisit that here in just a moment. Number three, ChatGPT does not have access to deep expertise in a specialization. Now, the good news is there's a lot of material that it can cover. This is definitely a place where you have to be aware of the mistakes that can be made. Anytime you get a source or a bit of information out of ChatGPT, whether it's a name, a historical reference, a date, a research paper, or a book, it might know about the book, but when you start to hone in on questions, it's going to get answers incorrect. It might misattribute a quote to someone, so you have to be very careful getting deep into the niche information. Again, you can supplement the information it uses, but that only goes so far. So you should definitely be aware. The deeper you go, the less likely it is to be accurate. Number four is ambiguity, vagueness in a response, also in terms of how we are prompting it. It turns out that the way that you prompt the system has a pretty substantial impact on the answer. If you're very vague in aligning your question, it's going to probably be vague in giving you an answer. But the model highly values a coherent answer if it is able to do so, which means that it's much more likely to be vague in its response in order to provide that more coherent answer. So you might ask it a question that is looking for something specific, and instead you get a very generic paragraph back. It's really not good at providing a very precise and terse answer. When you ask it a question, you can expect it to give you a very long response, and it's very typical for that to be vague in its approach or more general in order to maintain coherency. Number five, inaccurate information. It is absolutely, positively a thing to get information out of ChatGPT that is completely false. So while it's very good at aiding your research or giving you a direction to go after, you absolutely cannot use it as a verbatim response mechanism. You need to be checking the details and ensuring that what you're getting back is consistent and that it is confirmed. There are ways to solve this problem, but first and foremost, make sure that your use of ChatGPT in your pipeline is toward the front end of your development process in order to give you enough time to error correct, because it is entirely possible for it to give you information that is totally inaccurate, out of date, in particular, as we talked about in point number one. And also, a really important point here is it's not easy to tell when it's lying to you. It's not going to be obvious. It's going to give you an answer that will sound correct and be completely wrong in some circumstances. So be aware of that as you go about using the tool. Number 6 is really about how you input questions. Be aware that when you enter a question, when you enter a prompt, you're going to get a different answer practically every time. So it's not going to consistently respond. Now, in my view, that's actually a benefit. You can actually ask it the same question multiple times and you'll get a slightly different answer. In general, the answer will be similar in nature, but don't expect it to use the exact same wording. It's also a good idea to change your prompt a little bit if it's not exactly what you want. Really, this sensitivity to input phrasing is the idea of prompt engineering, because what you give it is really vital and important to the kind of answers it's going to give you. Number 7 is the long-term conversational memory. So one of the interesting things that is happening behind the scenes in ChatGPT, they did a really great thing with the interface. ChatGPT allows you to have a conversation. And when you're having a conversation, that means the things that you said prior are kept, are held onto in order to retain that context. So if I ask a question and it provides an answer, I can tune that answer by adding an additional question in the form of a prompt. When you do that, it's actually using the previous answers and questions to guide the next response. So behind the scenes, what's actually functionally happening is there is a set of previous responses that are fed back into ChatGPT every time you ask an additional question. So if you were to build an application that replicates the functionality of ChatGPT by using the OpenAI API, you would have to build a mechanism that caches, saves, or resubmits the conversation each time that you ask a new question. And the reason for this is that it does not have a long-term conversational memory. So you have to build in some additional components in order to facilitate that. And the developers of ChatGPT have done that work for you. But you also must understand that there are limitations to this. The mechanisms that are used to solve this problem also include summarization. So if you are having a very lengthy conversation with ChatGPT, what will happen is your previous questions and answers will actually be summarized in order to shorten the length of the number of tokens that are submitted back to ChatGPT. Now, the number of tokens is closely associated with the number of words, but it's a little bit more specific than that. We can cover that in a subsequent video, but essentially there's a limited number of tokens that you can submit. Those numbers continue to go up over time. ChatGPT 4 has a very large number of tokens that will be available in the future. I have access to GPT-4 through the API, so we'll be talking about those probably in subsequent videos. But what you should be aware of is that there are limitations to the length of what you can submit, and there's absolutely zero long-term retention. It is all what's inside of that conversation and what is submitted with each prompt. Number 8, ethical considerations. And this is really a hot topic in the AI space right now. There is a lot of concerns over how the models that back these AI tools are built, the way that they are generating responses. The old adage we've used in computers for decades, garbage in, garbage out. Well, the same applies to data models as well. You have to be aware of the sources of information that are used in the training models. That information is absolutely not perfect. Mistakes have been made in building the model. It is an incomplete representation of society at large. But also because of the bias that is inherent in the training data sets, it's impossible to completely remove that as a problem. So you need to be aware of this as you are submitting your prompts to get the information that you're looking for. There will be biases presented in the responses it will give you. OpenAI that run ChatGPT are doing things constantly to iterate how the model will respond to questions. You may or may not have seen some of the prompts that were specific to particular politicians and how the responses are more guardrailed with some individuals versus others. So I think the future of this space is really going to be more deeply understanding where the data sets are coming from. Not all of them are good. Some of them are highly opinionated, but nevertheless, anything that comes from a human has the potential to be biased. And so we have to be readily aware of that as we are putting in our prompts and using the information that comes out of the tool. Number 9, Be polite. I know this one sounds a little bit crazy. You are, after all, talking to a computer. But I do think that this is really important for us as people, as well as for the integrity of the model. There's been a number of things that have happened with chatbots over time. I'll be going into detail about these as I cover the historical happenings in AI. There was a situation with Microsoft's chatbot, Microsoft Tay, and basically within 24 hours of releasing this chatbot, it was spewing really not nice things. And that was largely attributable to the nastiness that people were feeding it. It turns out that a computer tends to give back what you give it. So we have to be aware of that. I say be nice because courtesy doesn't hurt us as individuals. If you are interacting with the chatbot in a way that is polite, if someone else comes along and sees that interaction, hey, no harm done. You've been polite, right? That's valuable and I think the right thing to do. But also there has been indications, what we've learned from Microsoft's Bing Chat implementation, that it is possible to take things in a bad direction and the model might react in a negative way if you push it, if you're rude, or if you interact with it in a negative way. And I think my personal opinion here is that model is informed by conversation and data that is of a not nice nature. And so when you begin to touch that surface area, it will respond with that because the model's inform it to act that way. The model is informed by our human behavior. So when you respond negatively with negative information to a negative prompt, well, I don't think we should be very surprised by that. So be nice. It doesn't cost you anything to be nice, and you just might get what you want. Number 10, don't ask it questions you know it can't answer. What do I mean? There are certain things that are definitely not going to be possible for the model to do. It's more likely to have a completely made up, fabricated hallucination response. In other words, if you are asking it questions about something that doesn't exist, the answer you get, of course, is going to be an answer that doesn't exist. Again, it follows the garbage in, garbage out principle. I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the things that go wrong. And I hope that you learned a little something, and perhaps the next time you sit down for a session with ChatGPT, you'll keep this in mind so you can get better responses. Did you enjoy this top 10? Was it valuable and interesting? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you're enjoying this, I would really appreciate you liking the video. That lets others know that it's interesting, and perhaps I can hit it big and be discovered by the great algorithm of YouTube. And last but not least, if you're not subscribed and you're enjoying it, please do subscribe. I notice every time somebody hits that subscribe button, and I absolutely enjoy getting to see that. So delight my day and subscribe, and you'll get to see more of the great content. See you again next time here on AI Mistakes.